Today we're going to do the actual 3-axis motion part of the skull. This is the part that's housed in the rear of the skull, and we'll show you how that all goes in a step-by-step procedure here. I've saved a little time in advance, and I've put on the larger gears, that I believe it's 24 tooth gears, on the one HS 225 BB and on one HS 77 BB, and that's the bit heavier torque one. That's going to be for the nod. That one's for this one is for the tilt. And the rotate one is right here, and that doesn't get a gear on it. Instead, that gets a servo coupler, and I'll show you what that looks like. Comes from Servo City. Little gold round piece there. It's already cut out for a C1 spline on the bottom underneath, and so all you have to do to mount that is you remove the screw from the HS 225 BB in the center. You set this spline on wherever it fits, doesn't really matter. And then we're going to take the screw, it drops right down in the middle, screws right through the base. Okay, now that's screwing down inside. Okay, now that's not going to go anywhere. Now that just gives you a round coupling. I know you probably can't see these things here. Round coupler on the output, and what we have on the top of the U-joint, the universal joint, is a square hole, and that's going to be held on by a square rod, and these square rods from Vex Robotics are in the parts list. They come actually much longer than that. Let's see, where did I put them? Here they are. This is what they come like. They're about 75 millimeters long. And what we need to stick into this here is a 20 millimeter piece, because that just happens to work out. So right there is 20 millimeters. What you're going to do is take one of these, put it in a vise, measure it carefully, and take out a hacksaw and cut a piece off. We'll save use the ends that are already kind of buffed out and filed off a little bit, and we'll put the end that you cut inside so that this end here comes down and fits into the universal joint. So we're going to put this long one away. So we have what we need here. That's going to be one of the last steps anyway. But in order to house a square peg in a round hole, we're going to need a round hole, or a square hole converter, I guess would be the. So I got a bunch of them in here, and they're just little plastic pieces that I made. We'll try and get a picture of them, and then we'll put it up for you. But they're solid plastic pieces. They fit inside this little housing here, and what we do is, I'll try and get a close-up here. This is the set screw here. And so the set screw is where the opening is. This isn't a square all the way around, it's 3 sides of a square. So what we do is we insert this square shaft so that the smooth side is facing downward. That's what's got to slide into a shaft later, so we want that to be able to do that. Now I'm going to tighten it up and bear down it pretty hard. Don't want to strip it, but we want it to be in there pretty good. So that gives you a square peg sticking out of a round hole. That's how we do that. I'm going to plug this back into our servo controller board. By the way, this is a first look at the brand new Halloween Skulls servo controller board. This is a Dmx servo controller board here, and it's pretty small. It's going to fit inside the skull, and off to the side here, these are the completed LEDs from an earlier video where we soldered the tiny LEDs on, and they plug in to the controller board. They'll be used later. They're not in this step, but I have them attached here. So our Dmx Control comes in here. That's hooked up to a computer, which is just off screen here on the camera. And I have a VSA routine running. So what I'm going to do here first, we'll line up all three of these things, and I'm going to start the routine. And what that's going to do is it's going to tell all of these servos to go to their correct positions, their centered positions. And so I'll start it right now, and you'll hear them adjust. That was it. Okay, so now all of the servos are in position, and they're going to, when we're ready, we're going to do that again when we put them into their places and let them hold that position. So this is how we align it so that all of the parts are pre-aligned to be looking straight forward when they're all in the center positions. What this does is every time we build one, we go through this process, and it makes all of the servo settings for every single skull exactly the same, because they're all going to start from center position, and I'll show you how that's done here. Here's the base plate. Here is a middle plate, and that's the one that's going to house the larger HS77 servo, and we have a top plate right here, very small. That's going to house this rotate servo. So we're going to slide. This is these have already been tapped. All the holes are going to be tapped to accept the screws, and this plate here slides right into the base plate and easily moves back and forth right there. And you can see that the teeth here line up to what will be in the back of the skull, and this is an opening right here for our first servo, which is an HS 225BB, and we want that. You're going to screw that up from the bottom. You're going to place it in place, and we're going to attach that. I'm not going to do it quite yet because we haven't aligned these pieces yet, and I'll show you how that's done. And then we take the top piece and we slide that in so that the gear part, which is up on the top here, fits right over here where the other servo is going to be. Okay, now that just slides back and forth there, and the gears face this way. Now there's an extra hole in all of these things, and I don't know how well you can see it, but there's a hole right there. There is a hole in this one, this middle one right here, and there's a hole in the bottom one right there. And when we align all of those holes together, this set of plates holds the skull in the exact front-facing position. Now it just happens that those holes are just the right size for a 440 screw, which I just happen to have here. It's not threaded, you just push it in. So I've pushed that screw into place, and now all the plates are locked together, they're not going to move. So while the plates aren't moving, we're going to flip it upside down here. I'm going to restart the, let's see, I'm going to put it in a loop here. Our VSA program, by the way, the VSA program has no, all it's doing is giving you the default positions. It doesn't have any commands to move the servos in any way. So they all come on and they turn to their default position and they stay that way. So we're going to turn that on. It's running right now, which means that I cannot turn these servos because they're holding position. Alright, so the first one, this is 225. I'm going to stick it right in here. And you might ask, which way does it go? And it does have a correct position. And it's going to go so that the gear here is closest to the screw that we're using to hold everything in place. Now with this gear holding it in place and these locked in place, that's where it goes, and that's the dead center position for the servo. So every single time we have one of these, they're all going to have the same servo settings. Now I'm going to screw this one into position. It takes 4 screws. I'm just going to put 2 in for right now to save time in the video. It'd probably be fine to just always have 2 in there and never worry about it again, but we're going to send them out with 4, just in case something ever comes loose. You're not going to lose your servo because of 1 screw coming out. We haven't had that problem, but better safe than sorry. Okay, now that's in place. Can't move anything. Not supposed to be able to. Okay, now the second one. While it's holding position, this is the 77 BB, and this one is going to go facing down on this control here. Let's see. And that fits right in position, just like the other ones. I've got a longer screw for this. This is a higher torque one, so I'm going to use a 1/2 inch screw on this one. Just I'll put another one on here. Screw that in. We'll have 2 of those in. Okay, that's not going anywhere. Now the final thing is our rotate servo, and honestly this one doesn't matter where, well, it has to go in a certain position. It has to go with the piece here facing the front of the skull, or closest to the front of the skull. Otherwise, well, I don't even think you can put it in the other way. It'll just go in, but it won't. It'll be touching the back, and it can't move. So it'll be obvious which way it goes in. It goes in this way. Use the shorter screws again. 1/4 inch screws. We'll put 2 of those in. Now that one doesn't have to align to anything, because that's the rotation, the left and right of the skull, and there's no reason why you can't just align it when you mount it on the skeleton. You just turn the mount until it's facing forward, and you've done your alignment for the rotate. That's all there is. Now these 2 look very, very close. They are very close, but they're not touching. You can slide a piece of paper, not 3 pieces of paper. You can slide a single piece of paper between them. So that, yeah, there you go. So there's no extra wear and tear on them. And they will never change their position relative to each other going this way. Now, it's very important to remember to take out that screw that we have holding everything in place before you actually move one of the servos, because that blocks everything and you will not be able to move the servos, and you'll burn them up or you'll strip gears. So that little 440 screw comes out and that goes away. You won't need that for anything else. But it was in its holding position, and now this is free to move. There we go. Alright, so now we're going to show you how this fits into the skull. And there are actually no tools required to fit it in there, and there are no screws required to hold it in there. But for now, we'll take the part of the skull you remember from parts 1 and 2, putting in the rod end and the jaw servo, and we'll just move that jaw servo wire out to the bottom here. And hard to see, but in here, let me zoom in on this just a little bit. I'm going to keep it in the light here. And you can see in here there are some parts. Right here is a little shelf, and in the back there's a shelf. Over here there's a shelf, and these edge pieces play into it as well. So this piece is going to go in so that it fits underneath this shelf here and this shelf here. It's going to go under those, on top of these, but it doesn't actually touch them, but it comes close. And then the shelf in the bottom, in the back of the skull, it sits on top of. So there's a little bit of these two are holding it down while that one's holding it up, and that fits all inside the skull nicely right there. Now what you see here is this square shaft facing downward is going to fit inside of the universal joint. I have a couple of Dmx universal joints. It's going to fit on top of a shaft that I have over here. So this is the center shaft that you get with your 3D printed parts. I painted this black and it's not holding up too well, but it's because it's getting moved around. This one was even worse. But I think that's a good idea, because once it's painted black like that, when the jar opens and it shows in there, it won't catch light and shine back because of the shiny metal. So either we paint it black or we put a piece of shrink tubing over it and shrink it down, and you can do whatever you want with it there. We'll paint them black and hope that they survive the trip. On the bottom of that is one of the other pieces of hardware. That's the shaft coupler. It's the larger one, also from Servo City, that's in your parts list, and that is what's going to hold. As you can see, it's got this shaft on it. One set screw is holding that down, and then the other set screw actually sits on top of the skeleton, where you've cut the shaft off that goes up to the skull. This fits right over that shaft, and to represent that, I have a little stand here with the same size shaft there. This is threaded, but it doesn't matter, it's the same size. Now this will fit right over there, and then we'll screw it on. So this represents the shaft that goes up the spine of the Bucky skeleton, or whatever skeleton you'll be using. Alright, that's socked on there pretty nice, right there. Now, what happens is, this whole thing gets fitted on here. So this actually, I just wanted to show you where it went. It doesn't stay in there. Well, it does. It doesn't stay in there until we do this. So now you can see the skull rotating around on that. Now to hold it in place, we got a couple of things. There's an adapter, and this will come with the shaft. It's a what is it? 1/4, 20 to 3/8 adapter, which isn't really important, except that it clamps down on the rod end and holds there nice and tight. So that's what that does. Then just on the top, there's a little extra threads hanging out of the top, and to fill that space and to hold everything in place, we throw a little 1/4 20 nut on the top. That holds down that adapter. Now that's not going anywhere. That leaves you that little square part flush out of the top, and that is where this goes. This is our universal joint from Dmx Robotics, and it has it takes a smaller Allen wrench, which I have in here. We're going to remove one set screw altogether, the top one. That comes right out. Okay, so what we've done is we removed one set screw on the top. The set screw on the bottom we're going to use as we set this universal joint right on the top. Okay, now we take that set screw and we tighten it right up. We push it all the way down so it's tight. Screw in that set screw. Nice and tight. Get it in there. Okay. Now, with that facing upward, this is a little tricky part. You got to get this piece in so that this shaft, this square shaft, slides into the square hole. I'll show you the square hole. And it's not going to fall right in. This takes a little bit of doing and a little bit of manipulating, but the idea is to get it kind of hard to do trailing all these wires. There we go. I got that in a little bit. And there it is. Okay, now that we have everything in place, let's run a quick VSA program, run it through its motions. We're going to do the rotate first. Then we'll do the nod. It goes up, goes down, goes back up, and then we'll tilt. And back to starting. And that should be it. Now the next step will involve the moving eyes and putting the front of the skull on, and of course mounting this controller board inside and getting rid of all these, well, hiding all the wires inside. So that will be step 5, and that'll be the next video.